Now let's welcome in Auburn head coach Bruce Pearl to the 24/7 Sports feature, Social Distance. Coach, what's been the hardest part of this quarantine for you?
Evan, good to see you, man. Probably being away from my guys.
Yeah.
I don't know how much they miss me, but I miss them. And then not being able to work normally. I love the evaluation process. I really do enjoy the spring and the summer to get out and lay my eyes on kids, and we kind of recruit a little different around here. I do a lot of the evaluating, and my coaches do most of the recruiting, if that makes sense. So I love to get out in the gyms and see kids play and look at young kids, and so I've missed those two things the most.
Have you had to lean more on film work and trying to gather film from these kids, whether that be from this past high school season or even synergy stuff from last summer?
Yeah, we have, and we've the whole synergy thing has really helped us make some pretty good decisions on some transfers.
Mm-hmm.
We're not heavy transfer, and I don't say that as a positive or a negative. I typically love to have one guy sitting out because I have a hard enough time keeping 13 guys happy. So if you got 12 guys and you got a guy that knows the system, he comes back a little bit as a veteran. I've always enjoyed that. And so clearly watching synergy and watching players on their college teams against good competition, I think is a great way to evaluate, understand a player's strengths and weaknesses.
For sure.
And that they'll fit and be able to start coaching them rather than recruiting them. As far as the high school stuff's concerned, that's difficult because evaluating a high school player against his high school competition can be challenging because he should dominate. But what will he do against other players, bigger, stronger, faster, like him? You don't really get a look at that unless you're seeing him maybe in state tournament play or seeing him out there on the AAU circuit, where these teams are drafted, they're recruited, they're handpicked, and you get a chance to see the best against the best live and in person.
For sure, it's certainly going to make finding the diamonds in the rough, so the guys that emerge in the spring and summer a little more difficult. It's going to make my job more difficult. It's make your guys' job more difficult.
It is, and having spent 9 years in Division II and 4 years at the mid-major level, there are going to be kids that are going to get dropped. They're going to be missed just because
For sure.
there isn't enough time. The legislation last year limited us so much as far as being out. And now, with the pandemic, we've got some limitations. And then next year, if this transfer legislation goes through and guys can transfer without sitting out, there are going to be a lot of really good mid-major players that are going to be looking at getting a high major after a year of being at mid-major because they got overlooked because they didn't get seen over the 2 summers.
Yep, for sure. Well, let's shift gears a little. You led Auburn to a Final Four in 2018. Do you feel like that run has helped you and your staff on the recruiting trail?
Evan, not as much as what you would think, in the sense that, for me, early identification, offering guys before it becomes fashionable, making good decisions, and being able to demonstrate opportunity and a certain style of play. Guys coming in like Chumo Kiki somewhere in the 40s and leaving 16,
right,
and be a draft, or Isaac Okoro coming in the low 40s and leaving as a top 10. That absolutely resonates. Winning's important, but it doesn't seem to be as important as some of those other factors.
Right.
And so for us, we got to get back out there and start looking at those young kids and trying to make some good decisions, because if you look at a lot of our best players over the last several years, they all say the same thing. Auburn was one of the first schools to offer me when I was a sophomore or something like that.
Yeah. You mentioned Isaac Okoro, and obviously he had a tremendous season for you. And you're right. His stock went up, especially among NBA executives and GMs. Walk me through his development from the time you got him till the time he left, and where you think he improved in his development.
Well, first of all, Evan, he's a great kid. And I think if we could start there with recruiting guys that you want in your locker room, you want on your campus, I think that goes a long way towards winning. So he already had that. First generation, his parents were born in Nigeria. They came over, they lived the American dream. They worked so hard to achieve and be successful for their family, their entire family. He's got the work ethic. So he came in as one of my great kid, came in with a great work ethic. And then I think it's coaches' jobs to put kids in positions to be successful.
Right.
We asked Isaac to do what he was great at, and then we featured it, whether it be offensively, in ball screen, or in gaps and getting downhill and getting to the foul line and playmaking off the bounce. We encouraged him and forced him to come up off of screens and shoot the basketball before he thought about putting the ball on the floor. That was a really important step for his development, and I was so proud of him that he was willing to take big shots. He made many, but more importantly, he was willing to finally take them because he's always been so good off the bounce. And then one thing I think that gets overlooked a lot is putting kids in position to be successful defensively. We featured Isaac defensively. We put him on the other team's best players. We put a 6'6" power forward body on point guards, and he was able to keep guys in front of him. The NBA saw that. They liked it. And I think that's why his stock, rose tremendously. So if I said this about Chris Moore, was coming in from Arkansas, West Memphis, Arkansas, one time in an interview, and I'll say this about Isaac Okoro. If you open up a dictionary and look into the definition for Auburn basketball, and you saw a picture of Isaac Okoro, that'd be okay with me.
You're going to lose Isaac Okoro to the draft this year. And I think it's interesting, since that Final Four run that you guys made, you basically have an entirely new roster. What has that transition been like, and what are the difficulties that come with that in the turnover?
Evan, I don't know yet. We've lost 11 players in 2 years off a Final Four team that won the SEC tournament championship and a team that finished second in a really good SEC this past year. 11 of those guys are gone, including 6 from last year. So we've had a really good recruiting class. We needed a really good recruiting class because we had lots of opportunity. And we had a very good class in front of it with some really good, solid players that have got to go from being role players a year ago to being asked to do a lot more this year. So I would say this season could be one of the most challenging that I've ever had in my coaching career. I'm 60 years old. I've been doing this a long time. We've got really good talent. We got really good kids. We got to come together in a hurry. Our schedule is really challenging early. And our ability to put the pieces together quickly, given the challenges of not being back for a full summer, that's going to make that even more challenging. If I was returning a veteran team, there would be some real advantages to returning a lot of vets this year.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's something that I think nationally hasn't been talked about a ton, but just guys missing summer, especially freshmen, to come in and get in a strength and conditioning program and get acclimated with systems of not only your program but every other program in the country. It's going to be interesting to see how much that stunts the development of freshmen around the country this year.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it's a huge factor. Look, there are 4 seasons to training, and we pay very close attention to it. The things that we ask our kids to do in the summer are extremely physically demanding. There's a heavy emphasis on the weight room. There's a heavy emphasis on performance development. We're talking about some difficult training. We're talking about a lot of sand volleyball, a lot of sled pulls, a lot of resistance training. We're talking about stairs and hill work. We're talking about heavier lifting with heavier weights and fewer repetitions. We're talking about even different kind of diet. Right. We'd like to put on some size in the summertime. You could never do that in the fall. You shouldn't do it in the fall. Then you get to the preseason, and then you've got a different kind of training where you're getting your body. It now becomes more about movement and defensive slides and speed and quickness and changing direction. That's a different kind of training. Then you've got an in-season training, which is obviously more maintenance, more flexibility, still focusing on movement. And then in the spring, that's getting ready for summer. I agree. Incoming players benefit from that summer more than any other player because they've never been through anything like that. And it really helps them perform and prevents injury once the season starts. The sooner we get them back, the better off they're going to be from their health, from their safety and from their ability to perform.
For sure. You mentioned the recruiting class you have coming in. It's ranked top 10 nationally. I think number 7 overall on 24/7 Sports. It's a great group. What excites you about that class that you're bringing in this year?
They wanted to be at Auburn. They wanted to be at Auburn. You know, Austin Wiley doesn't get nearly enough credit for getting this thing started at Auburn. When Austin was finishing up his sophomore year in Birmingham, and I was probably finishing up my second year at Auburn, we were playing hard,
Right.
and you could see we were a little more competitive. We hadn't won yet. And Austin Wiley decided to come to the same school that his mom played at, was an All-American, an Olympian, and his dad played at as an All-SEC player. That set everything into motion. And then the guys like Mustafa Heron or Jared Harper, or the list goes on, and then Chumo Kiki came to Auburn. Another guy that had that Pied Piper effect for us was Sharif Cooper, because Sharif was back in as a freshman, probably in high school, was very, very undersized. But
Right.
we had been in Jim McKeecher was only about an hour and 15 minutes away from, hour and a half away from Auburn's campus, and saw that he had a chance to be really unique and really special. You know, he had a little bit of Jared Harper, and a little Kyrie Irving in him.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Sharif didn't sign until November, it was always out there that Auburn was led, that Auburn was a leader. He saw what we did with Jared. He saw what we did with Javon McCormick. He saw what we did with smaller, quicker point guards playing fast. He had a Pied Piper effect on this class. And so that would be one thing. I'm grateful to Sharif. I think the second thing would be the dimensions. You know, Justin Powell is a great shooter from Kentucky and a way better athlete than what people realize. Chris Moore, I don't know where he plays, what position. He's just out there because he can guard multiple positions. He's a tough kid. He's productive. JT Thor, who we got in the spring, was an absolute essential get for us. JT Thor was ranked as a top 10 player in the 21 class, reclassifies to 20, and has a chance to be that D'Angelo Purifoy, Chuma Okiki type, Isaac Okoro even, type of a skilled forward that can really make some plays, and he's a pro. It's just a matter of how many years it's going to take us to get him right and ready. Knowing that Greg Brown was really most likely to stay home at Texas, and Shaka did such a great job building that relationship, we really needed a guy like JT. And then obviously Dylan Caldwell is a really good, big, athletic prospect. Big men that can move and face and do things like that are obviously, you know, really, really important as far as our program is concerned. We've got one scholarship left, and we really need a dynamic scorer. I need a veteran. And so there's some guys out there that we're still involved with to close things out. But it's a good group, but we got a lot of catching up to do.
You mentioned Sharif Cooper, and obviously he's a really impressive talent, and you said unique, and he's certainly that. You've coached some really good point guards in your day, really good guards in general. Is he the most talented incoming freshman guard that you've ever recruited?
Yeah, I'd say based on the ranking, he's the first McDonald's All-American I've had at Auburn. I only had 2 at Tennessee, Tobias Harris and Scotty Hobson. Yeah, he is. He is very unique. He is very dynamic. His dad, Omar Cooper, was the head coach at AOT. I think part of the reason why he sent him to me is because, I mean, like Coop, I'm not going to pull any punches. This is going to be hard. Sharif's got to be special at both ends of the floor, and I know he will be. And the reason why is he's a champion. He's a winner. The kid just wins. Like, that's all he really cares about. He scores 5 and they win, he's happy. He scores 35 and they lose, he's got to, you know, he's not happy. And so we're going to coach him hard and going to make him, you know, play at obviously be effective at both ends of the floor. I love scoring point guards because you got to guard them. And the thing about playing out there on the floor with Sharif, he's going to require a great defender. So who's going to cover the other guy on the floor, right? I mean, you better put your best defender on Sharif. Well, if you don't, he's going to kill you. And if you do, the guy over there on the wing, he's going to get you.
Yeah, no question. You know, football is obviously a big deal at Auburn. What's your relationship like with Gus Malzahn, and in what ways do you all use the football program to help the basketball program?
We're a football school. Everybody says, well, why do you sell that? Because we are. We got some of the greatest history and tradition of football. I thought for years, Evan, when I was at Tennessee, that Auburn was a private school. I thought Alabama was the state school of the state of Alabama. But you come to this pretty little village on the plains, and you see the size of our campus and our school and our classrooms and how we compete against the giants of the SEC, schools that are 2 and 3 times our size. It's incredible. And it's because we have got coaches like Gus Malzahn, leaders like Coach Malzahn. He is a great man. If I had a son playing football, if Stephen was playing football like he was in high school, I'd want him to be coached by Coach Malzahn because it's going to make him a better man, not just a better player. He has got a unique ability to get the most out of his players. I think we're talented in football at Auburn. But if you look at the recruiting, we finished the top 10 in recruiting every year. We finished 6th in the SEC. There are 4 or 5 teams that finish ahead of us in recruiting. And yet when we line up on the field, we can play with any of them. So at the same time, we're also an everything school. Because if you look at our men's and women's programs, one of the things I'm really excited about talking to prospects about, and this would speak for the SEC, come to an SEC school because you're going to get the finest strength and conditioning, the finest orthopedic surgeons, the greatest nutritionists, the finest mental health specialists. I am not afraid to say this. The SEC is the best conference in the country. You see this shirt right here? You see SEC? We are the best. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves in all sports. Now, we've had some catching up to do in men's basketball, and I think in many regards we have caught up. We got nothing to apologize for when it comes to the quality of men's basketball in the SEC. But when it comes to a conference and the way our athletes develop in this conference, the number of pros we have in all sports, everybody's second, and they're second by a long shot.
Yeah, for sure. It's obviously a great league. We're seeing a lot of recruiting success, especially this year in hoops. I think 5 of the top 7 schools in the rankings are all SEC schools. So it's certainly headed in a tremendous direction. Last question before I let you go, Coach. You mentioned your son, Stephen Pearl. What's it been like having him on staff with you and getting to work alongside him on a daily basis?
Well, it's been a blessing. Evan, you think of your life's greatest accomplishments, whatever they are, the birth of a child or getting married or winning a championship. They were special because you did it with the people that you love, your friends and your family and your coaches and your players. And that's what makes it so special to work every day with Stephen. He's got a great mind. He's an incredible scout. He's a really good teacher. He understands our system. He really helps players be successful within the framework of it. He's a metrosexual. He's always working out. He's always clean shaven. He's always really well dressed. He cares about stuff I could care less about. But he's a great young transition for a student athlete to come in and learn how to be a pro, learn how to act like a pro, dress like a pro, treat people the right way. He's a monster in the weight room. He's incredible at fitness in his diet. And so he's a great asset and resource for me to be able to plug my young guys in and say, just do what Pearl's doing.
Awesome. Coach, I really appreciate you taking out the time and jumping on here with me. Thank you.
Evan, appreciate you. Appreciate the work that you guys do. And we'll look and not all you guys get it right. You get it right more often than not. And I look forward to seeing you back out there on the trail.
I appreciate that.